Very good. Good evening, everybody. We're coming to you live on Facebook from the Torch Center. Tonight is Tuesday night, and on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock every week, we have Torch University, which begins with an incredible class from Rabbi Wolbe on Jewish history. And then at 8 o'clock we take over, and we study in-depth Chumash. And tonight we're going to share with you another thought on Pesach. And these are all different ideas. You'll be able to find them all on our website on torchvideos.com, and you can go by topic and you can find Pesach or Passover and find all of the Pesach videos. So, and you can share all of these ideas with your friends and family around the Pesach Seder. You can have like many different, dvars to share with your family. That's the goal. So, we see that right after the children and the adults participate in the Manishtana, and they ask the 4 questions, and everyone is trying to get involved with the asking of questions, which we discussed on Sunday at the Pesach Minute from Congregation B'Shalom Shalom. So we have this idea constantly of asking questions, and that's important. And then what's the answer? The answer is to all of those questions. Avadim hayinu leFaro b'Mitzrayim. We were all enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. But what's wrong with that statement? What's wrong with that statement is that the converts weren't slaves. The Levites were not slaves. The Kohen, the dynasty of Kohanim, who are from the Levites, weren't either enslaved. It was just the other 11 tribes that were enslaved. So if you look at the next paragraph, it says, Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer, all right? It was a story with Rabbi Eliezer that many of the Tanaic sages were sitting around, and they were talking about the Exodus from Egypt. So the question is asked, why specifically those sages were selected to tell us that they were talking about the Exodus from Egypt? There were many over the years. I mean, it's the most popular mitzvah in Judaism to remember the Exodus from Egypt. And who do we pick as the selection of individuals who we're going to take as an example? These are the ones who spoke about our Exodus from Egypt, and it says that they spoke till the morning. Right? Imagine talking the whole night about all the miracles. Which just is a side point. Before we get to that question and answer, let's just understand what that means. We're all going to have a Seder next week already. Monday night and Tuesday night we're going to have our Seders. And we're all going to be sitting with our family and friends, hopefully. And we're going to be talking about the Seder. So, there are several different ways you can do that. You can do it with the intention of how quickly can I get this done so I can eat. Very popular. There's another, is that you want to get as much detail as possible. You want to ask every little question. You want to get every little answer. And then there's another way you can do it. Is you can actually try to visualize what it means to be enslaved and what it means to be freed. And there's stories about our sages that they would actually, put 2 benches and they would walk through those, through them as if they were walking through the sea. And they would have, they sell these packages you can buy, the 10 plagues. Have all these plastic little frogs. Imagine if you had little frogs all over your cake and all over your, your Chinese food or whatever food you're eating, right? It wouldn't be so pleasant. But to just really feel what it is, to experience what it was to go through the Exodus from Egypt. And then imagine you have to pack all of your belongings, and it says that the wealth that the Jews left Egypt with was the equivalent of 90 donkeys worth per person. Imagine that. So we have 3.2 million Jews leaving Egypt, and 90 donkeys per person. The gold, the silver, the riches, you name it. Now, just as a side note, They say that the Egyptian government sued the state of Israel. They wanted back all of the spoils that Israel took when they left Egypt. They wanted to sue them. So Israel countersued that they wanted the fees for 210 years of slavery plus interest. Right? So so that ended that. But the idea that to really visualize what it was to get out of Egypt, and to have that exodus where the Jews, went through the sea, and then they were in the desert, and then they experienced Mount Sinai. I mean, everything that was going on. So, back to our story. Sorry, can you pass the Haggadah, please? Thank you. Okay, so we see over here. I'm just gonna. It says over here, Maseh Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azari, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, Shayim Mesubim b'nei Barak. One Seder night, 5 of the greatest rabbis, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon were sitting in b'nei Barak. All night long they told about the miracles that happened when the Jews left Egypt. They did not stop until their students came to tell them that it was time for the morning prayers. Imagine, they were so engrossed in reliving that experience and understanding every element of that miracle. The question is, why do we bring these 5 sages? There were plenty of other sages. So our sages tell us a very interesting thing. Is that we were all once slaves in Egypt. And for this reason, the author of the Haggadah writes that Choser of Tarfon, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who were all Kohanim. They're all from the Kohen, from the tribe of Levi. That the tribe of Levi were not enslaved. Rabbi Yeshua was a Levite, and Rabbi Akiva, in this case, was a convert. So all of these people who are actually spending this time and immersing themselves in that experience of reliving and recounting every single step of the Exodus were all not slaves. At least their ancestors weren't, for one reason or another. And yet they're also obligated to remember the miracle that happened to the Jewish people. So it's a big challenge for us in our modern era. We say, well, we're not in Egypt anymore, so leave us alone. Or we don't live in Europe, and in Europe they had limitations, and people say, oh, there's only circumstance. Or today, some people say, today it's not a problem, because today we don't have trigonosis, so you can eat certain animals, because we have to be so careful before we start with making these distinctions of eras and times and saying things aren't relevant anymore. The Exodus is always relevant to every Jew, no matter where they come from, no matter who their ancestors were or were not. No matter whether the tribe of Levi or their converts, every single Jew is part of that experience. And that's what our sages are teaching us, specifically with these 5 sages, who were not descendants of direct slaves in Egypt. And yet they understood the importance of them, they themselves, recounting and reliving that experience. So we're all a unit. We're not. It's like in the U.S. we have 2 different types of citizens. We have regular citizens, and then we have politicians. There are different laws that apply, right?
Yes.
Right? That's not the way it works in Judaism. In Judaism, everyone is obligated to the same exact rules. By the way, in other religions, they have that. They have different tiers, right? It's not dependent. Maybe dependent, but there's people who don't get married. There are people who are part of certain, different groups and different. We are allowed to sin. They're not allowed to sin. They're this, that. We don't have that in Judaism. No matter if you're a rabbi or if you're a 13-year-old bar mitzvah boy, anyone in between, the same laws of kosher apply, the same laws of tefillin, the same laws of Shabbos. That doesn't make a difference where your membership or your affiliation is. Everyone is obligated to the same exact rules. Equal rights. Right? Judaism is all about equal rights. And there's no differentiation between, I'm this old, so it doesn't apply to me. I don't have to make blessings before I eat. Or I don't have, it doesn't work like that. There are no special privileges in Judaism, period. None. Well, you could sin because you're a simple person. No, we don't have that. Or someone atoned for your sins. He took care of the bill. That doesn't happen. Right? We're all equally responsible for every single mitzvah. We're equally responsible to tell that story to our children. So this year, God willing, when we sit there around the table, our children may ask us, well, Daddy, or Abba, or Tati, whatever they call you, or Mommy, but you weren't actually a slave in Egypt. We all were, because we're part of one family. Right? Even if we come from a family of converts, or we come from a family of the tribe of Levi, it doesn't make a difference. We're part of this family, we're all one. And we're all responsible for one another. And we were all slaves. Yes?
I was going to say, even if you're a Kohen, that's patrilineal descent. Your mother's family could have been from another tribe.
That is true.
It doesn't mean that you're not descended from slaves.
That is true. That is a good point.
Rabbi?
Yes?
How long do you think the Red Sea was parted? There's a reason why I'm asking this.
As long as they needed to get the Jewish people through, the Red Sea was parted.
About it, this has been fascinating to me. If every man had 90 donkeys,
it's a lot. Yeah,
108 million donkeys to pass through there. It would take them
right.
6 months to get through there.
There's a lot of people. But you also have to remember that they did have the pillars of cloud, right, guiding them. So they had special.
108 million donkeys crossed the.
They had the wealth of 90 donkeys.
Yeah, that's what he said. The equivalent of, again, according to the Midrash, it was actually 90 donkeys per person. Right? You're right, 108 million donkeys, that's a lot. That is a lot.
I figured
it doesn't negate the fact that there were 90 donkeys. It probably were. Or it's not 108, it doesn't make sense, it's more.
Well, if you count all 3 million, then it would be 270 million donkeys.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And you got to evade the jungle droppings as you're crossing.
That's a lot of donkeys.
I know. I mean, that's kind of.
You guys, that's too much.
Yeah, but a lot of matzah to carry too. Don't forget that. And you had all the Manischewitz grape juice and wine, right? No, Manischewitz wasn't around then.
And matzah's like.
Yeah. All right. So with that, my friends, we part from you this evening on Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for liking and sharing this video. And we look forward to sharing with you on Thursday morning from the congregation Beth Yeshurun at 9:30 another installment of the Torch Parsha and Pesach Minute. Thank you and have a wonderful evening, my friends.